The black and white screen slowly flashes, as if an old film is coming to life. The viewer sees the broken roads of northern France, the remains of scorched fields, and destroyed defensive lines. But this is already in the past. Behind us, Europe lies under the boot of the Third Reich, and only one island remains unbroken. After the rapid defeat of France, Hitler felt invincible. What had been considered madness just a year ago had now become reality. Belgium, the Netherlands, Denmark, Norway, France, everything collapsed under the onslaught of the Blitzkrieg. The Wehrmacht moved so quickly that the world did not have time to record the new borders. Europe became a black and white map, where the huge, dark silhouette of the Reich appeared more and more often. But Hitler still faced an insurmountable obstacle: Britain. A country he considered weak, outdated, clinging to its empire. He was sure that the island would fall as easily as the other countries. In his mind, he was already picturing a Third Reich parade in London. But the first real blow to his self-confidence awaited him. Hitler believed that Britain would not withstand the pressure. After Dunkirk, the British lost most of their heavy equipment, artillery, and vehicles. All Reich analysts reported the same thing. The British army is weakened. It can be crushed with one decisive blow. So, Hitler gave the order to prepare Operation Sea Lion, a large-scale naval invasion of England. But for the landing to succeed, one thing was essential: complete air superiority. Without it, German ships and transports would become ideal targets for the Royal Air Force and Navy. Confident in the strength of the Luftwaffe, Hitler turned to his main trump card, Hermann Göring. Göring swore that he would destroy the British Air Force in a matter of weeks. He promised to wipe out airfields, destroy radars, and paralyze air defenses. He spoke of victory as if it were already in the bag. But the British Isles were preparing. Spitfires and Hurricanes took off from dark hangars. Young pilots, yesterday's students, farmers, miners, mechanics, anyone who could hold a steering wheel, joined the ranks of the Royal Air Force. Britain knew that the fall of France was not the end of the war. It was the beginning of the fight for its own survival. Meanwhile, German airfields in France and Belgium were turning into giant beehives. Hundreds of Messerschmitts, Junkers, and Heinkels stood there. Mechanics worked around the clock. Squadron commanders studied maps of British airfields and industrial centers. Strategists marked the positions of radars, the eyes and ears of Britain. The moment was approaching that would decide the fate of the island and the entire war. And while Europe remained silent under the boot of occupation, clouds were gathering over the English Channel. A new chapter was beginning: the battle for the skies, a battle in which, for the first time in the entire war, the enemy was not simply resisting. It was prepared to fight to the last drop of fuel and the last pilot. The gray strip of horizon over the English Channel blurs in the shimmering heat. Summer 1940. The day when the sun rises over Europe, heated by war. At Luftwaffe airfields in France, mechanics tighten the last bolts, close the hatches, and fill the tanks. The shadows of the propellers flicker across the concrete like knife blades. Commanders check their maps, the location of the next strike, and the metallic smell of the approaching attack is already in the air. Hitler has decided. Britain must be broken. And Göring has promised to carry out this task with German precision, methodically and ruthlessly. And so, the Luftwaffe begins its offensive. The first waves of Junkers and Heinkels take off heavily, their engines roaring as if lifting the war itself into the air. Their path lies across the English Channel, where cold water boils below, and ahead lie British airfields, radar stations, and military factories. The hunt begins. The German pilots are confident. Behind them are victories in Poland, Norway, the Netherlands, and France. The skies over Europe belonged to them. But Britain was different. Off its coast stood an early warning system, the chain-home radar network. While German bombers were still forming groups over France, British operators could already see them on their screens. This technology would be the main surprise for the Luftwaffe. When the first wave of Germans approached the coast, British fighter planes were already taking off to intercept them. Young pilots, sometimes just 18 or 19 years old, took to the skies with one goal in mind: to prevent the enemy from advancing further. They didn't call it a battle, just duty. But every sortie could have been their last. High in the sky, two forces converged. On one side were the sleek ranks of German Messerschmitt Bf. 109 seconds, fast, dangerous, accustomed to dictating the rules of combat. On the other were the British Hurricanes and legendary Spitfires, whose maneuverability and speed became their salvation in deadly duels. Above the southern coast of England, the air vibrated with the sound of engines, the shouts on the radio, and the trails of smoke stretching from downed aircraft. Each downed plane was a flash, a flame, and another pilot disappearing into the abyss of the sky. But the Luftwaffe attacks did not stop. Day after day, wave after wave, German planes descended on airfields, trying to destroy the British Air Force in its infancy. They struck Ramsgate, Eastchurch, Manston, and Hawkinge. They bombed radars, hoping to blind the British early warning system. Some towers fell, but most withstood the attacks, and British pilots continued to take to the skies. The Luftwaffe did not yet know that they were making a crucial mistake. Their strikes were powerful, but not systematic. Goering constantly changed targets: airfields, ports, factories, radars. The enemy struck widely, but not accurately. War does not forgive chaos. England held on. On the ground, women and men, factory workers, firefighters, technicians, and rescue workers stood side by side, rebuilding what the Germans had destroyed. At night, they masked the lights. During the day, they put out fires and repaired damaged aircraft. The Luftwaffe thought they were hunters. But the skies over Britain were gradually turning into a trap. Every kilometer over the English Channel became a deadly test. Every sortie was a battle with an enemy that could not be broken by bombs or numbers. Thus began the real battle for the skies. Not yet a turning point, not yet a victory, but already the first crack in Germany's confidence. August 1940 was approaching in Britain. It was the bloodiest and most tense month of the entire operation. The sky became an arena where not only air supremacy was decided, but also the fate of Europe. Everything depended on whether Britain would hold out. The continuation of the war, Germany's plans, the future of the entire continent. Every dawn began the same way. The hum of radar, alarm signals, pilots hastily assembled at their fighter planes. Officers shouted, "Scramble!" and British Spitfires and Hurricanes took to the air in a matter of seconds. They did not know where they were flying, only that the enemy was already close. At this time, the Germans were increasing the pressure. The Luftwaffe was sending out more and more groups of bombers, covering them more and more densely with Messerschmitt Bf 109 seconds. In some sorties over the English Channel, up to 200 aircraft converged at the same time. Thousands of horsepower, fiery tracers, the roar of engines, the air literally vibrating from nearby explosions. British pilots operated under constant stress. They had fewer people, fewer planes, and less time to rest. But they had solid ground beneath their feet. They were fighting at home. Every farm saved, every school left intact, every airfield was a personal victory. The battles became increasingly fierce. At an altitude of 5,000–6,000 meters, the air was thin and cold, but the pilots hardly noticed it. Metal clanged in the cockpits, shells pierced the fuselage, and glass shattered from the impact. The flames of burning planes falling into the sea left fiery trails against the blue sky. The Spitfire performed brilliantly. Its speed and maneuverability allowed it to evade the Messerschmitts and get behind them. The Hurricane was heavier, but became the main hunter of German bombers. Its guns pierced the thin plating of the Heinkels and Dorniers. Each successful attack meant that more targets on the ground would be saved. The German pilots were experienced and confident, but they were increasingly faced with surprises. At one point, Göring decided to destroy the British radars. Then, he changed his mind. He decided to finish off the airfields. Then he changed his mind again. The enemy was losing focus. Each change in orders gave the British another chance to hold out. But even that was not enough. Human strength was reaching its limit. RAF pilots sometimes flew 4 or 5 combat missions a day. Their eyes were red from fatigue. Their hands were shaking. But as soon as the siren sounded, they were back in the sky. Some did not return. Some returned with injuries. But everyone took their place again because there was no choice. Meanwhile, the British received serious reinforcements. Volunteers from Canada, Poland, Czechoslovakia, and New Zealand. The Polish 303 Squadron stood out in particular brave and fierce pilots who had lost their country but now fought for the skies over England as if it were their last chance. Their effectiveness became legendary. Over the southern coast of England, the battle turned into a storm. Every day, there were dozens of battles. Every week, hundreds of planes were shot down on both sides. The Luftwaffe continued to deliver powerful blows, but Germany began to lose the most important thing, time. By mid-August, it was clear that Britain would not fall. Its skies could not be conquered by simple, massive air raids. The Luftwaffe expected an easy victory, but encountered an enemy that was fighting with its last ounce of strength and continuing to hold on. This scene is the culmination of the actual air campaign. There are no winners here, only survivors. But it was during these weeks that Britain proved it could endure, and Germany realized that it would take more than force to break the island. It would take a miracle. And miracles are rare in war. September 1940 was supposed to be the month of German victory. According to Göring and Hitler's plan, Britain should already have been on its knees, and the skies should have belonged to the Luftwaffe. After that, Hitler planned to carry out Operation Sea Lion, a large-scale naval invasion of the British Isles. But things did not go as planned. Strangely enough, the turning point began with a mistake. A German bomb, dropped by mistake at night, fell on London. In response, Britain struck Berlin. For Hitler, this was a personal insult. He gave an order that changed the course of the war: to stop attacking British airfields and switch to bombing cities, primarily London. This decision proved fatal. The RAF airfields got a much-needed respite. Pilots no longer fell asleep to the sound of explosions. Engineers managed to repair hangars and replenish fuel and ammunition supplies. British radars continued to operate, intercepting German planes over the English Channel. Meanwhile, the Germans began massive raids on London. On the 7th of September 1940, a stream of nearly 1,000 aircraft appeared over the city bombers, accompanied by Messerschmitts. The sky was filled with a roar, like the clanging of metal. Buildings collapsed, streets turned into a sea of fire, and thousands of people lost their homes. A period began that went down in history as the Blitz. But even under Blitz, Britain did not break. Every night, firefighters, medics, and volunteers worked under fire. The underground became a giant underground shelter. People brought mattresses, candles, and radios there. In the silence of the underground tunnels, what would later be called the spirit of resilience was born. However, The main action was not taking place on the ground, but in the sky. The RAF changed its tactics. Now their fighters did not rush into battle in small groups. They flew out en masse, in large wings. This tactic was called Big Wing. It was this tactic that allowed the RAF to inflict serious losses on the Luftwaffe for the first time. Day after day, Germany lost more aircraft than it could replace. The supply of experienced pilots was dwindling. Every bomber lost meant a lost strike on British infrastructure. The British, on the other hand, were gaining experience. Young pilots, who until recently had barely been able to fly, were now becoming masters of aerial combat. The turning point came on the 15th of September 1940. This day will go down in history as the Battle of Britain. The Luftwaffe launched a maximum attack, 2 powerful strikes aimed directly at London. The RAF mobilized everything they had. Almost 500 aircraft clashed in the sky. The Germans expected an easy victory, but they encountered fierce resistance. The damaged Heinkels fell into the Thames. The Dorniers burned and fell apart in the air. The Messerschmitts were unable to cover the bombers. In one day, Germany lost so many aircraft that it became clear there was no air superiority, and there never would be. That evening, Hitler postponed Operation Sea Lion indefinitely. A few months later, it was cancelled altogether. The Battle of Britain was the Third Reich's first major failure of the war. It was the moment when Germany first realized the limits of its own power. The moment when a small island stood up to a huge war machine. And at that moment, European history took a different turn. If Britain had fallen, the war could have ended differently, and the world we know today would be different. But Britain stood firm. And it showed that resilience, courage, and faith can withstand even the most powerful airstrike, which many considered invincible.